I don't want to do this because I want to play more Wuthering Waves, but I have to get this out because it's been on my mind for a while. So, while I was making my sort of thing about Wuthering Waves review video, there was a topic that I was knee deep into that I realized that perhaps I needed another video to address this. So yeah, if the title wasn't obvious, I'm going to talk about the absolute worst part about Wuthering Waves. The story. Now, let me preface with this. I completed the entire story, and I know, this is only their first patch. But even so, I'm a bit annoyed over how inconsistent the quality of the story is. Now, you can say, well, if you don't like it, just skip it. After all, Wuthering Waves is about gameplay and combat. Sure, but it doesn't change the fact that the story is still part of the game. We can't ignore something that is shit and pretend it doesn't exist. I too would love to think that a shit stain next to my plate doesn't exist, but it's still a shit stain. And we need to acknowledge and address that, so the game can be better moving forward. So, that said, let's start from Kuro has had a history of their story not being the greatest from the beginning, but eventually they had to work their way to make it from being somewhat passable into something great. For PGR, most of us would generally say that Chapter 9 or 13 is where PGR's story starts kicking. The thing is, getting there was a journey and a half. And they had a lot of over-exposition over what the punishing virus is, where did it come from, what are the constructs, how does the infection work, who are the ascendants, and what is the construct's mind, and what are all the mechanics of all that. But you see, in a visual novel, a higher level of exposition is needed to overcome certain limitations brought forth by being what it is, especially when the game is designed with the choice to engage with the story or skip for gameplay. But for a fully rendered 3D game, this is a different story, as expectations are different. Unfortunately, in Wuthering Waves, they maintain this over-exposition, but it also comes with a glaring issue. When it comes to exploring different ideas upon the world building, instead of taking their time to build the world, they decided to drop the whole building on us with the ultimate exposition dump that I have ever seen. They were throwing unique terms and stuff around, bundled into an all-in-one package, which eventually became overwhelming. This was a serious problem, as it's hard for me to care in the first place, as I felt like they decided to skip why I should care, and go straight into the science as if I already cared. Sure, me wanting to go out in the world and fight some bosses really didn't help the situation, but it's still a problem that the story couldn't even suppress those urges. Hope you know what overclocking or lament or Threnodians are or what Frexidius are up to. It's all going to be on the test. Make sure you also know the science behind tacit discords and waveform phenomena. Extra credit if you know how resonators work. We're all going to shove it down your throat, so good luck! It's weird that I know all of these concepts, but in my second playthrough of this game, I still feel like a dad asking his kid about his hobbies and the kid is gushing about it, saying terms and stuff related to it, but somehow still sounding like random words put together. And oddly enough, I'm getting a bit of deja vu, because of the previous title. Look, these concepts are interesting, but honestly, it would have done them some good to stretch them out in a longer expanse and incorporate gameplay into it with a show-don't-tell kind of manner. Perhaps give it a bit more mystery, like it's a work in progress sort of deal. After all, these concepts have some gameplay implications, but instead what we really got is us being held hostage by exposition that was rooted from 3 trinkets. It's not great. Worse yet, I really don't need to hear about everyone's life story. But what certainly doesn't sell this whole thing is this. Oh yes, we are doing this again. Last time I made a take about comparing the JP voice acting to the EN voice acting in PGR, and I got some people riled up in the comment section, and I'm being nice here. But I need to put this out there because you're free to defend the EN voice acting in PGR, but the EN voice acting in Wuthering Waves, I think it's indefensibly awful. Like, what happened? Credit to where credit is due. Actually, the male voice actors are pretty good. Heck, I'd even go as far as to say the NPC's voice acting is exceptional. But what's with the female voice acting? Aside from Chishia or maybe Encore, where did everyone's emotion go? And I kind of think that the current state of the voice acting doesn't really match the characters at all. Like, take this for instance.
They are the ones keeping our people safe. What I've been doing is not worth mentioning compared to them.
Yes, you sound very downtrodden. I can totally feel it.
The journey with you has exposed me to immense suffering, but the battles on the front line must be even more brutal than what I've witnessed.
Wow, I can totally feel how this journey has affected you.
Greetings. What might interest you here? It's dangerous. Why did you attack us when I already gave you food and funds? Do you have other mouths to feed aside from what we see here?
They seem trained. These are not ordinary people.
Another day, another progress. Hey! Oh, not you again! Stop! Stop! Come back!
And you know what's frustrating? We know that they have more emotion than this, like through the trailers and even through exploration as well as combat. So what happened? And this isn't on the VAs. Normally I'd blame the voice acting director, but as I pointed out earlier, why is it that the male voiceovers are pretty decent? Better yet, why does it feel like the NPC voiceovers put their all into their acting? What happened to the female side? This whole situation pretty much left me bewildered and had me annoyed.
In that battle 3 years ago, our soldiers got into a
Wait,
gruesome
is she
fight
trying to
against
hide her
countless
accent?
discords, either native to Northville Barrens or produced by retroact rain.
I think she's trying to hide her accent. Look, after I got shit on for talking about Ian voice acting in PGR, I decided to go all in on Ian for Wuthering Waves to give it a fair shake, but in the end, I was left wondering why most people sound like their lines were AI generated despite the fact that text-to-speech probably has more emotion than these characters. And after a while, out of morbid curiosity, I wanted to see how CN and JP were doing, and get this, it was like night and day. Like, now for CN, I feel like it's a no-brainer because, I mean, this is a CN game. They probably got the whole deal down for sure. But for JP, you could argue the same, as the JPVA industry is filled with seasoned professionals, so of course they get the gist of how to go all out. But you know what hurts? I don't like Yang Yang because of what's done in EN. I despise her, and not the VA, just the direction they decided to take this character. But imagine how I felt when I realized that the JPVA for Yang Yang is Yui Ishikawa. Of course Kuro would ask Yui Ishikawa to voice a character in Wubon. I mean, she's literally the main character in PGR, not to mention voicing 2 other characters in that game. Don't worry, I didn't forget about 2B. Could have been 4 total if it was with the new version of Black Rock Shooter, but at this point, PGR would be Yui Ishikawa the game. Anyway, I digress. I personally find the way Yang Yang was ultimately executed to be a bit disagreeable on the EN side. It's really odd because I'm weaving between ASMR and AI generated speech. And what really has me peeved is that Yang Yang actually sounds fine when she says her combat lines. Which brings me back to the question, what happened? I can't believe I missed out on Yui Ishikawa.
Oh, don't worry. I'm okay. Scar's resonance abilities appear to involve teleportation and the manipulation of space. He trapped me in confinement, and I could only sense that it wasn't far from here. It took me some time to break that barrier. Sorry, Rover. If only I could have reached you sooner.
すみません、漂白者さん。あそこ、少し不気味な感じがして、風はほとんどなかったのですが、それでもたくさんの時間を超えた感情や思いが、あそこには渦巻いていました。期待、憎悪、絶望、そしてあの日記が綴っている悲しみと思い。
Rover, it's dangerous there. The Northville Barrens is the front line in our defense against the Threnodian. We must be careful about going there.
最後まで、あの女の子は村の人たちの無事を願っていました。でも、誰かの犠牲によって人が救われることなどありません。
We've been seeing these black petals for a while now. They're scattered all over the place. I'm pretty sure they're not made by Miss Verena. The streams have been disrupted. Someone has been following us. Rover, are you sure you want us to leave? Okay. Tricia and I will wear these black flowers and go look for members of the Black Shores in the city.
なので、もしコーラン類書を通じて漂白者さんの身分が確認できるのなら、あることを意味します。それは 過去に漂白者さんは今週と何かしらの関係を持っていたということ、そしてその関係が普通の関係ではないということ。
But really, it's frustrating to pinpoint what in the world is going on. Not because the voice acting is entirely bad. It's because among all the characters, it's somewhat inconsistent. There are moments where it shines, but there are also a lot of moments where it just falls flat on its face. And get this, my friend recently showed me the ENVA's IMDb page, and I was shocked because they aren't just some random voice actors. These are actual talent. Check it out yourself. It's crazy how good they are. So again, it's strange how we got something of this level here, and it's really hard to pinpoint where the problem lies. Maybe male, female, and NPCs have different voice acting directors? I could go on about this, but there's more. This is probably the smallest set of grievances compared to the others because it can be fixed, and chances are it's probably fixed by the time this video comes out. Nevertheless, I still need to point it out because it still hurts my enjoyment of the story, or at least whatever's left of my enjoyment. So here's what I did. Basically, I put the game into autoplay to allow characters to be able to speak for each section to see how it all comes together in a cohesive manner. But what I got were short stop dialogue cutoffs, lines that don't match the characters' lines, but most importantly, text where it cuts off at the bottom without finishing a paragraph. I know us Kuro gamers love paragraphs, but that's for our character kits. We don't need that in our stories. Worse yet, you can't even finish your paragraphs when a character is talking. Now, if that was all, it sounds like I'm overreacting to how bad the experience could be. But then there's the audio issues. First up, switching languages. This one is a minority bug issue, but honestly, this shouldn't happen regardless. When I switched from EN to JP and then JP back to EN, all voice lines were completely muted and lip syncing, which is designed to match whatever audio comes out, just stopped working. Honestly, I felt like I was playing CVT2 all over again, but really I thought it was straight up funny. Now, I resolved this issue by restarting the game, but I mean, I missed an entire cutscene with voiceover, so yeah. Then there's the final mission. Now, I won't spoil anything because Kuro honestly cooked with the ending of this first arc, but my audio lagged behind the cutscenes by 7 to 10 seconds, which felt awful. There are some severe technical quality issues throughout, and it's a very bad impression no matter how you look at it. So you might be thinking, okay, a lot of it had to do with execution, right? Good thing he didn't talk about the actual story, right? I mean, they spent nearly a year scrapping 90% of their story and building it back up, cutscenes and all. Well... Okay, I'm kinda joking about the title. The story is passable for the most part, but it doesn't change how the execution is baked into the story. And especially the beginning being what it is not great. Halfway through the story, I actually had a realization that I found funny, but also something that annoyed me moving forward. Here, try replacing Rover with Reincarnated Hero, and then replace Threnodian with Demon or Demon Lord. Let's see if you have solved the plot by then. Good luck! Yeah, it sounds reductive, but the point I'm trying to make is that with all these complex concepts and terminology, it actually gets straightforward when you get past the first half, which is weird. And even then, the story isn't groundbreakingly good or anything like that. It serves a purpose for the world, but it lacks that weight of interest and investment. What's worse is that I feel that the character quests are not only executed better than the main quests, but also explain the world in a more interesting manner. Probably because the characters themselves are more invested in it than they are when they are in the main story quest. Not to mention that the visual storytelling is much better. Which, by the way, I just want to put it out there, Gion hard carried the main story. That aside, I just wanted to point out this exchange in the character quest. It's pretty decent, so I think there's still some hope here.
The fallen soldiers. They must have held on to those memories dearly. That's how they resisted merging with the Tacit Discords.
Yes. They have been silently fighting for us all these years, or we would have faced a TD outbreak.
Overall, we simply have to accept that even when there are components in the story that are lacking, like voiceover for EN, the over-exposition, the technical issues, the quality inconsistencies, these are all part of the story, and the story is the sum of its parts. And I'm not saying that the story is all bad. I mean, when you look at the presentation, they actually go all out of their way to have more moving parts in their conversational cutscenes, filling it with more body movement and micro-expressions. there are some good things here. Even then, when people talk about not playing Wuthering Waves for the story or tell others not to play it for the story, I don't blame them. It's not good. That's not to say it'll never get better, I'm sure it will. They just didn't put their best foot forward. It sucks because whenever my friends ask me if Wuthering Waves is good, I feel hesitant to answer, and it also feels like I'm put into a hard place as I personally love the game. A bias exists because I've stuck around in PGR for so long, and the combat in Wuthering Waves is the best in the market, but it's hard for me to tell them to go and play it because as much as they care about gameplay, they also care about the story. They prefer a certain balance, and story really helps in that it adds value to the gacha characters you want to roll for. Sure, there are cool character kits and animations or design, but there's also personality, background, and their place in the world. It just comes to show that Kuro doesn't usually get it right the first time. People can forget the fact that they can make mistakes and eventually try to fix it. That's fine, but the issue is that they can fall flat on their face and screw up, which could end up being costly. Sure, we get some really good rewards for their screw-ups, and sure, people can point to the marketing of Wuthering Waves to be an improvement compared to what's been done in PGR, but they have proven to screw up too, like what happened in the EN debut livestream. Especially when it comes to first impressions, I cannot agree with forcing players to suffer in the beginning to get to the good bit. And it's not just Wuthering Waves, it's for all games. Just because it'll be fixed later on in the future shouldn't mean that the issue should exist in the first place. And yes, I'm well aware that they updated the game to where now you'll be able to skip all the story content. Regardless, the story left a bad taste in my mouth for sure. I don't want to hear, well, just play Genshin Impact if you want to enjoy the story. No, I don't want to hear a flying potato scream at me about what just happened 2 minutes ago for 5 minutes. Actually, I'm being mean here. Sorry potatoes, you didn't deserve that. I've always been a fan of Kuro and their combat, and it's a no-brainer that I'll stick around. Besides, I'm only pointing out that the story is the worst part of the game. Everything else is fantastic. Well, most things in the game are good. There are some other issues, but that'll be saved for another video. That said, I know Kuro can make compelling characters and story. They've dropped a little bit of their classic nihilistic and dark writing here and there, and I dig it. I love the characters they had in PGR, especially the antagonists. Hell, my favorite two characters are Luna and Lamia, which are both from the antagonist faction. I'm sure they'll work something similar in Wuthering Waves. But let's just hope that it won't take 9 chapters. Alrighty, since this is a Wuthering Waves video, I of course need to talk about Genshin in this ending section, as always. So here's the thing, when I was rolling in the beginner banner, I ended up with this dude, took a big fat L up the ass, felt like Kuro abandoned me then and there. So up next I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna get Calcaro in the front selector banner, and get this, I got Calcaro from my first 10 roll in the selector banner. Easy game. So you're forgiven, Kuro. So what does that have to do with Genshin? Well, for one, I just wanted to brag that I got Calcaro in my first 10 in the selector. And remember when I said that I wanted both him and her, right? Well, looks like one half of the prophecy came true. So, time to complete the next half. Anyway, that said, I'm gonna go back to holograms. While that's happening, there's some videos up here for you to check out and see my reframe analysis on if brain dead gameplay has a place in Wuthering Waves, or a dialogue on how we should view casuals in the game. Oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe.